Good morning and welcome to Essential Ingredients. I'm Justine, your host. Today with me as a co-host is Lisa Johnson, independent consultant and researcher. Welcome, Lisa. Thank you so much again for being my co-host.
Hi, Justine. Thanks for having me again. It's been great.
It is always great to have you here. And today, as our guest is Andrew Shakman. Thank you, Andrew, for joining us. He's the CEO and co-founder of Leanpath. Did I get that right, Andrew?
You did, perfect.
You know, I was relying on being able to read it off your sweatshirt, and it's just, I think but you know, the things from the sweatshirt are covering the L, and there you go. Much better visual now, much better visual.
I have to keep my arm out like this. There.
Well, you know, as a video cast, we want to make sure that everyone watching the video can actually see it too, so that when they're listening to you and they're intrigued and they want to go and learn more, they can go in and Google and put in Leanpath. So anyway, thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to learn a little bit more about you and have a great conversation today about Leanpath and all things food loss and food waste and all these different things that we come together to talk about. So Lisa, I know that we've introduced you before, but for those people that are listening and watching the video cast that maybe are first time viewers, you know, I always like to give them a chance to get to know you a little bit. Would you mind just giving a short little intro on yourself?
Sure. I've been doing research on food loss and food waste, starting back in early 2009, 2010, 11, something in there. And I have focused my work on food loss coming from fresh fruit and vegetable farms. And so I work with agricultural producers to try and understand why they're losing so much of their crop and how we can recover that, get it to people who need it. And that's been my work for a long time. So I guess I fit into the food loss and food waste research category.
You do, you do. And you're making so many changes and having such an impact in so many different ways. And you've been a great resource and partner to me as we build this podcast and we bring in so many guests that have been able to bring in so many different resources for our audience to be able to learn and connect and be able to make more informed choices as they're building businesses or putting food on their table. So it's been a tremendous resource for our listeners and for me as well, and for the podcast. So thank you. Thanks for being a key player.
Thanks. I'm particularly excited to hear from Andrew today and let your audience hear from Andrew today, because he's been an inspiration to me in my work for a long time. And so I know he inspires a lot of other people. So maybe your audience is going to be swept away too by what he has to say.
Lisa, you're very kind, setting a high bar for me here.
Yeah.
Well, we're excited. Andrew, we'd love for you to just share a little bit about Leanpath and a little bit about your background, and so that our listeners can get a sense of who you are and a little bit about what Leanpath is.
Absolutely. Well, first, thank you for having me. It's great to be with both of you here in the virtual space. So I'm Andrew Shakman, and I am, as you mentioned, the co-founder and CEO of Leanpath. And what Leanpath is a company that's focused on preventing wasted food. And we start with the view that the things that people measure are the things that they manage, and the things that they measure are things that they improve. And so the challenge is that for the most part, people haven't been measuring food waste. It's been a blind spot. And as a result, it's been an undermanaged part of most food service operations. And so we created a company to basically enable measurement through technology so that people could make the invisible visible and begin working on reducing the amount of food waste that they have. And in fact, our mission is to make food waste prevention everyday practice in the world's kitchens. And so that's what I do. And I've been doing that for about 17 years. And when we got started on this journey, food waste was really not a topic of conversation the way it is today. So we're really excited that it has become such an important consideration. I think broadly, not everyone is thinking of it, but many are. And of course it is a huge problem, and I'm sure we'll talk about that today, why it's such a big problem. But that's who I am and what we do.
So I'd love to start at the beginning though and learn a little bit about what inspired you to get into this space.
Yeah, so there's as with many things, there's not one moment. There are several threads that came together for me that brought me to work on wasted food as an issue. So when I began, I'd started an earlier business in food marketing of consumer products, mostly food and beverage and a few other things. But I had been actually doing work that today I wish I hadn't done, like selling pre-sweetened cereal to children, doing marketing programs and things like that. I look back and go, how did that happen in my 20s? But I was looking at that point that it ended to figure out what I wanted to do next. And I said, I want to do something that has meaning and makes a difference and solves a real toothache for people, something that's a product that's enduring, that's resilient through economic cycles. Those were some of the things I sort of set out to do. And through just some good luck, I came to focus on food waste. And at that time, menu prices were growing at a slower compounded annual growth rate than the cost of food at the wholesale level. And I looked at that and I said, wow, like this is a toothache for low margin businesses, which, most food service operations are operating with pretty thin margins. That's a problem. They can't pass on those costs to their customers. And so would it be possible for us to help them be more efficient in the middle of their P&L? And so we started looking at that problem. So initially, I came to this really through an efficiency and financial business lens, and started looking at how we could take management science that worked in manufacturing and other parts of the world, things like Lean and Six Sigma, and could we bring those into the kitchen in a lightweight manner that would allow people to tackle food waste? And what we found was that, yes, when you began a practice of daily measurement, you indeed could cut food waste in half or better, change culture, focus behavior, and that all those techniques that worked in automotive manufacturing and other kinds of manufacturing, a kitchen is really a factory. It's just for food. Obviously, there's an art component to it, but it's still producing something. And when you implemented that, you could drive those outcomes. But what was interesting about this journey is that no one really cared at the beginning. It was, we said, we can do this and we can help you. But there were leading edge operators who were willing to take this on because they saw it. But the majority of the industry didn't quite see it yet. And they were thinking about a lot of things, just beginning to think about sustainability as a concept. And this was not smack dab in the middle of their view. So I realized I had to go and do education on the concept. And so I went out, and anywhere they would invite me to speak, I would show up, whether it was 3 people in, Eastern Texas literally I did that. 3 people in Eastern Texas once. And I would go, if you would be willing to listen to me talk about food waste, I would show up. And my goal was first to explain to people why food waste was a problem, and then why prevention was the most important thing we could do about food waste. And then from there, why measurement was the mechanism to accomplish prevention. And finally, why the automation of that measurement was important, which was how people would ultimately come to Leanpath and need our services and products to automate that measurement. And in the base layer of that, explaining why food waste mattered, I learned a lot as I was preparing to teach that topic more broadly. And I had come at this through that financial lens. And as I started looking at it, I realized, oh my goodness, like 8% of greenhouse gas emissions come from food that is lost or wasted. It depends which area you're from, but roughly. And 25% of our fresh water is going into producing food that is lost or wasted. And a massive amount of petroleum-based farm inputs are being used for this. And 15% of Americans are food insecure. And I started looking at this, and it was like this moment where, as I was teaching this to people, sometimes when you're teaching, you are also the student. And right. I realized this was a nexus issue. that when you worked on food waste, you were working on the most important things. You were working on climate, you were working on food security and feeding the world. And in a world, right, where we're facing climate change and we're trying to feed 9.6 billion people by 2050, these are imperatives. Like we have to solve these problems. And when you're wasting a third of the food that's produced in the world, roughly, or losing it, that's just there's no way that you can operate, there's no way you can frankly run that in a sustainable way, right? And so I looked at all of this and realized that this was this massive problem and it needed to be solved. And so we started working on it, and in terms of bringing people to the table to understand the holistic approach to it, right? Environmental, social, and financial. And that was my journey.
That was wow. That is quite a journey. So I'd love to that is a big journey, and you've accomplished a lot over, it's been a while. And I'd love to just know some of the impacts that have really, the bigger impacts that you've made that have been most meaningful to you.
So, yes, I love that question, because impact happens in a variety of ways, right? So on one hand, there's food waste prevented, right? Like that's a metric for us. We measure how much food waste have we partnered with our clients to prevent. And I think at this point it's over 30 million pounds. I have to go check my latest stats, but it's a big number.
And over what period of time is that? That's
actually just from like 2014 forward, because we didn't keep that measurement from the earliest days when we began.
And for what? And tell me for what geographic area is that?
So we have customers in about 40 countries, and so we've grown a lot in recent years. So think of it as, earlier years was more a smaller community of people working on this and growing into it. And then more recently, a substantial, pre-COVID, a substantial uptick. Then during COVID, it's been a difficult time. And I'm sure we can talk about that more, but impact wise, it's that measurement of wasted food. I think the other part of the impact, though, is that in working in these kitchens, we've come to really see the frontline food service worker as a global change maker. And I will fully admit, in the same way I didn't see the environmental and social problems around food waste at the beginning, and we learned about them, and then we called people to work on all of it, we didn't see that frontline worker was that critical change agent until we started working in these kitchens, and we realized all of these decisions are being made by the people who are making the food and trimming, the produce, and they don't know that they're the global change makers. So I think the second big impact for me is that we're changing kitchen culture in a way where people are coming to work with purpose, right, and they're seeing that what they do matters well beyond the exact task they're working on, and that's exciting for me. The third impact is just building a company with what we hope is a great culture and will be consequential over time in making that impact on food waste and bringing together a group of people to do this work. And when you're doing something that's new and ice breaking, it's exciting and also super challenging. And so when I think about the impact, those are three areas I look at.
Lisa, you're just shaking your head. So
yeah.
Where are you?
Well, it's really amazing. As I mentioned, Andrew's work has really inspired me over time. But even today, I'm writing down how his work and mine intersect. It's really unusual maybe to take my inspiration in working on farms to reduce food loss from someone who is working in food service kitchens. You might think that they're very different environments. But the reason that my work has been so successful is because I followed what Andrew said very closely. When I heard him speaking at a conference in 2015, he was like, he was taking all these speaking gigs, I guess, right? But this was a particular conference where he was really showing leadership in this issue nationally. It was given by the EPA, I believe.
Right.
So what he said that was so moving to me, who was just getting started, and the rest of the audience also heard it, I guess, but he said it right to me. The measurement is the tool to prevent food loss and food waste. And I have found that to be exactly the case in working with growers. Growers have not understood how much of the crop was getting left behind until we did measurement. And once we did measurement, it was a huge aha moment for them. Hey, we could sell this to so-and-so. Hey, I know somebody who might want this quality. You know, they knew what the next step was, but what they didn't know was how big the issue was at their own farm. And so right now, I am sort of taking that work in measurement on farm and graduating it to the next level, which Andrew again has done in automating those types of measurements. So right now I'm starting a project to use drones and use image-based data collection to try and understand what's left. So, you know, let's say that works, right? That could make things a lot faster, and growers often use drones for other purposes. So it's kind of a technology that they are somewhat comfortable with. But when you mentioned that those frontline food service workers are change agents and making those small decisions that really add up all day, I thought immediately of farm workers who are making zillions of little decisions in every 60-second period that really can contribute to a higher yield, you know, less food loss, more profits, and more food getting to people. So, you know, still continuing to inspire my work with his work. So it's really cool to hear him today.
I'm psyched that it was inspiring, and I take no credit for taking the, you know, some of the things that came before on measurement and saying, hey, let's put these in a kitchen. And I'm really psyched that you talked about that, because I particularly measurement as intervention. And I think it's worth just focusing on that for a second, because there's an adjustment in thinking that I've found people go through. Initially, they hear about measurement and they think about data. And they say, okay, we're going to have data and data will be useful. And that's true. But the process of measuring is in and of itself an intervention, right? And so that's that key idea that when you ask people to measure something, they think differently about it. And there's this Buckminster Fuller quote that I reference pretty often, which is, if you want to change the way a person thinks, don't bother. Instead, give them a tool. And through the use of the tool, it will change how they think. And so by asking people to measure food waste every day in a kitchen or in the farm environment, you're calling them to an awareness of this issue. And then they get to make all those choices. And no one has to tell them in many cases to make those little adjustments, because now they're thinking about it and it's on their priority list. So that would be one thing I hope people would take away, is that measurement is in and of itself action. And sometimes people would look at me and say, well, why does it matter? I'm going to measure it. Now I know what I threw away. How's that help me? And I'd say, well, it's going to help you because next time you're not going to do it and you're thinking about it. And so that shift is, I think, a pretty big deal.
Right. Once you've done it, you can't unknow it, right?
Right. Well, sometimes people actively try to unknow things. It's fun. Like, I used to walk into kitchens and you know, get a lot of resistance. I've mentioned this some in some of my talks, where people would just say they didn't have food waste. And it was often like the body language. It was literally like a chef would kind of meet me this way and say, you know, we don't have any food waste. And in the early days, I would accept it, right? I would say, oh, you guys are one of the good guys. Congrats, you figured it out. And I'd leave. And, you know, now it's more like a Columbo thing where, you know, you hang around a little and ask a few questions and look in a few bins. And pretty quickly what you find is nobody has fully solved food waste, because every kitchen has food waste. It's impossible to not have it if you're, you know, I mean, there's going to be something. We can aim for zero, but there's going to be something. And what I learned was that the chefs were pretty universally aware that food waste mattered and sensitive to the idea that maybe if they had waste, they weren't doing a good job. And maybe they consciously knew that, or subconsciously just weren't looking for it. It was a blind spot. And so we talk about it as kind of the elephant in the kitchen that people have learned to work around and have sort of suppressed that. They don't even see it. And so once you come to them and say, hey, everybody has it, it's totally safe to talk about this and work on it. The best culinarians are doing that. and look here and look here and look here. And, Lisa, you talked about this. The moment you show people the magnitude of it, what they think of is a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And they look at the totals and they go, oh my goodness, I had no idea. And now it's safe to talk about it and work on it. And so it's a little bit of that overcoming the blind spots and frankly, the fear of waste as a bad thing, as opposed to recognizing that this is a thing we have to manage every day, the same way we manage safety or sanitation or customer service or creating, very flavorful dishes.
Essential Ingredients is powered by Next Gen Chef. Next Gen Chef is a movement that supports food and beverage entrepreneurs around the world by fostering a sense of community and providing its members access to mentors and a wealth of resources and guidance. Next Gen Chef feeds members with the knowledge they need to build better for you food and beverage businesses, so the world can have greater access to healthier food, comprehensive food education, and increased affordability. If you like what you hear on this podcast, continue the conversation or ask new questions on the Next Gen Chef app, available in the Apple Store and Google Play. Follow Next Gen Chef on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook at Next Gen Chef. Join Next Gen Chef and let's change the future of the food industry together.
So I wanted to go back because that was so interesting, and I love how you work with the chefs and all the workers in the restaurants and all these different things, and go back to what Lisa was talking about, how it inspired her, and talk about the impact it could have with the farmers, and just connect the dots there for a minute, because I think the amount of food loss and food waste, and I actually like to call it food loss, because every time Lisa and I get on this conversation, it's really food loss with the farmers, I think, because we're not placing blame on them because it falls off and it's right. I think we just want to bring
exist.
That home for them, right?
Loss exists at one point in the chain, and then waste exists later in the chain.
Right. So with the farmers, I think we want to call it food loss. So I just want to connect the dots here and see, maybe even just figure out for a second, I don't want to take up too much time here, but how could we collaborate here? And all of us, you, Lisa, collaborate here and maybe take it one step further and say, how could we go from this inspiration and really use this tool to further what the farmers are doing to impact them, to have less food loss, to incorporate measurement, to be able to really make a difference there.
Well, Lisa, you're the expert on the farm, and it sounds like
and you're the inspiration, Andrew.
Well, I'm happy to be. I'm not going to take credit. I'm not accepting that credit, but I appreciate it. Mm-hmm. I think it sounds like you're doing with this measurement a really totally the right thing, because I remember when you did those methodologies where you'd say, take a chunk of the field, right, and look at that chunk and then project out, sample and project out the loss, if I remember correctly.
Sure.
So to be able to actually do a complete calculation based on the whole field from eye in the sky sounds great, and it's using some sort of artificial intelligence to understand that. It seems like it's cutting edge.
Yeah, and that's a project that we're just starting up right now. So I'm excited to work on that. I also have another project going with World Wildlife Fund and a few other partners where we have created a tool, so to speak. It's basically an Excel file, right, that growers can use to sample and track their losses all throughout the portion of the supply chain that falls under them, right? So if they do growing, packing, and shipping, it can encompass all of that. And so along with that, we have created a tutorial video to show people how to use it, some frequently asked questions. And this can be found on my website if you're interested at lisakjohnson.com. But this particular metric, we are basically providing to growers. It's also on the Stewardship Index for Specialty Crops website, providing to growers for free to empower them to do their own measurement without having to share that data with anyone, and just to try it, see how they're going to use the data, And it's been really interesting so far because we have done some interviews pre and post measurement with growers and are finding that while the measurement aspect of it was easier than they thought it would be, that wasn't their favorite part. Their favorite part was being able to have the data about their crop, because they don't just see it as food loss, which, you know, that's what we're interested in, but they see it as a way to compare different cultivars or compare different soil types or compare different crews to see what's happening in which areas, what drivers are we seeing on our own farm that contribute further to food loss. So it's been really exciting to see growers' response to that kind of a tool.
I think that's great.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And I love all these different tools of use of measurements to be able to have such a great impact and really mitigate and continue to mitigate food loss and waste.
Yes, we were on a panel, Andrew and I were on a panel a long time ago, both talking about measurement. It was very well attended, but you know, I find it hard to believe so many people are interested in the actual act of measurement. Maybe they are, I don't know.
Yeah,
I'll keep you posted, because I'm telling you, people are interested because they want to. It's a way to see, and it's in a tangible way, how they're having an impact and the difference they're making. Mm-hmm. So, and I like measurement because I can see how many people listen to this podcast. So measurement is important.
Yeah. Yeah. Those analytics, right? People want to know. So.
Right. So, you know, getting back to, you know, Leanpath and what your plans are for the future and the impact you hope to have, not just right now, but in the next 3, 5, 10 years. What's the impact you're hoping to have and on changing the future of food?
Right. Well, you know, I think I mentioned briefly up front our mission, and, you know, so the vision, right, is we want to help contribute to ensuring a sustainable future. Mm-hmm. And doing that by helping to eliminate food waste. But the way we're doing that is really around making food waste prevention everyday practice in the world's kitchens. And for us, that's a simple statement, which is a huge lift. To get to the point where something is truly everyday practice, that's a big deal, right? So we want to, it's got to be easy, and it's got to be, people have to buy into it. It's got to be part of the culture. It's a priority. So that's what we're working to. And if you think about our 10-year vision, it's how widely can we help to grow that, you know, that practice, and through our tools, and not just our tools, our advocacy, our training, you know, how can we, and frankly others who will do currently or will create tools like ours, get out there and push for that. So we see that as a you know, sort of very clear focusing activity. Mm-hmm. And so from where we stand today, I think, you know, coming out of COVID is an interesting time because there was so much disruption in the food service world. I mean, it's really impossible to contemplate or to have imagined in advance mm-hmm. what happened, right? In terms of immediate shutdowns, massive food waste, then food insecurity because the supply chains were all broken and shut down, like cold shutdowns in big parts of the food service industry. And it's just a pretty cataclysmic time. And so as we come out of that, you know, I think the first thing is how do we do that in the strongest possible way? And we recognize that in the immediate term that food waste can be part of that, because operators are paying more for clamshell containers, single-use plastic disposables, which everyone had made great progress on minimizing that stuff. Yeah. And unfortunately, it's been back. They're paying more money in labor for sanitation activities that they didn't do before. The labor pool is obviously very challenging right now. People can't get enough workers. And so all of these things are pain points. If you can actually control food waste during this period, you have the ability to put some dollars from the garbage back into those other things. So we think it plays a critical role right now. The other thing is that this is so disorienting, and we talked a minute ago about measurement and data, and normally an operator can make a plan for today based on what happened before. You know, it might be, what did we serve you last year on this date? And you can't do that, right?
It's out the window now.
Right. So, but if you look at your food waste, it tells you immediately a lot about what's going on. Like, are people enjoying your menu? Is what you're serving working? Are you on course or off course in your forecast? Like, right there. So I think, you know, when you ask me about 3 and 5 and 10 years, the 10-year goal hasn't changed a bit. But I think in the near term, there's a goal around helping people come back from this volatility and really dial in their understanding of their business. And, you know, the last thing we want is for this to have disrupted the important work on food waste, but also just generally on climate action. Like, we have very little time to make really big progress. So the goal is, let's get everybody back and working in the right direction.
I think that's great. Do you have a toolbox or some sort of, you know, I think toolbox is the best word, that you share with people?
Yeah, so we have a lot of information on leanpath.com. We have a blog, and we're constantly publishing on issues around this. It's very little promotional stuff around our business. It's a lot about practice. So we do that.
Okay.
Periodically, we host webinars, which are free and available to all, where we have chefs on our team, and we talk about, you know, basically culinary strategies to take action, and as well as the broader issues and opportunities around measurement. And so those are a couple things that we do, and everybody can take advantage of those. And then for our customers, we have a further sort of depth of resources that are sort of inside our help center, which, you know, videos and a lot of content around these things and tools to communicate with end users. But it's all pretty specific to our ecosystem of our technology, so it's a little less relevant to someone who's not using those tools. But there's a lot of stuff, and I would love for people to come to our website and check it out.
That would be great. And, you know, we are launching in the near future our discussion boards on the Next Gen Chef app. So maybe in a few weeks, we can have a little Q&A session for the people that have watched this video cast, so that they can come back and maybe ask some questions as follow-ups on
Great.
These tools. And so they can go to the website, and then maybe you guys can come back and have a follow-up Q&A on our discussion board. So if you guys are up for it, we'd love to maybe invite you back and pick a date, so that anybody that's listening to this or watching this video cast can join us for a little Q&A session once they've checked into Leanpath and checked into Lisa's website, and then come back and ask some questions and follow up on this conversation, because there's so much to dig into, and there's so many tools and so many resources that I think it's worthy of a follow-up conversation. And there's so much.
Happy to.
Yeah.
That would be great.
I have a question I want to give to Andrew real quick right now.
You got it.
You have such exciting technology that you're working with. I know that practice and the culture is so important when you're building a team around this issue, but the tech is super interesting. Could you please describe it a little bit for the audience?
Right. Yeah. So what we do is, you know, we have 3 sort of aspects of the technology. The first is to track food waste. So imagine scales to weigh waste, cameras to take photos of it, touchscreen input devices to get context, like, why are you throwing it away? Some of those scales are underneath bins. Sometimes they're on countertops. We also have tablets where people will count eaches. So we had 12 bagels and 3 muffins and that sort of thing. So we have a variety of data capture tools, which are designed to do 2 things. One, make it really fast and easy to record, but also create some consciousness. And that's, you know, we don't want to do this with such a light touch that people don't even know that food waste matters, right? So that's a fine line between making it super efficient, but also just slightly attentive from their point of view. The second piece is what we call, after tracking, is called discovery. And that's where we have a cloud-based analytics platform, which gives folks the highlights of what's happening. It gives them photo galleries. It's literally like going through Google Photos and seeing all the pictures of food waste. And when chefs see that, it's like eyes pop open and they go, I had no idea we were doing that and that. And you look at trimming, go, why are we cutting strawberries, lopping the top third off of all the strawberries? Like, why are we doing that to begin with? And number two, if we are going to be trimming them, why aren't we trimming them much more efficiently, right? So you can see it, discover, see patterns and trends, ascribe value to the food, like what's it worth when you're throwing it away. So we do that. That's the second piece. And we push that data to people via reports that show up in their inbox every morning and once a week. And there's all kinds of stuff around making them aware and drilling down into it. And it's also neat because if you are running multiple operations, you can see them come together and be able to understand that. And then the third part is what we've got track and discovery. And then the third part is driving action. And that's where we want people to go from collecting data and looking at it to actually using it and implementing change. And so we have a series of capabilities around that, including helping people, prompting them with suggestions for things they should work on, encouraging them to set goals around those items, tracking their progress against those goals. So you take a big problem and break it down into small pieces, alerting them when there are out of band conditions like a large waste event and immediately telling them, notifying them, those kinds of things. And over time, we think those three things work together in a really holistic way. And then we support that with, our chefs and our customer success teams to kind of help people understand that, and then make sure in big organizations that all the sites are moving in tandem and doing the right things, and that's consistent with an overall food waste strategy. So really people come to us for kind of a turnkey enterprise food waste prevention platform, and we create that sort of ecosystem with all of those moving pieces in it. And it's exciting, and it is in the end behavioral. All of the tech is about helping people make the right call and doing that consistently. And so while I love technology, I care about people more. And so much of what this is about empathy for what's going on in a kitchen, and how can we put this intervention in without making life hard for people who are already working really, really hard. And I like to remind people in this too, like they're in every kitchen, you have an opportunity to be fired 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Like it is right now, right? If you serve food that makes people sick, you drop stuff on the floor, you fail a health inspection, right? Like it is right now. For those of us who work in, longer, timescales where we're on the hook for our annual plan, right? Or our quarterly plan or whatever, like we're not thinking about the stresses and strains of that, like performance, that immediate performance every single day. So we have to do all this food waste work in conjunction with those kinds of environments that are really difficult, and make it easy. And I think one of the exciting things is when you up-level it to purpose, people go, yeah, like I get it. I'm working hard, but I'm feeling good about what I'm doing. And not everybody's going to get it, but a lot of people do. And when you start asking them about it, they don't like food waste. Like when you talk to frontline team members, they are not wasting.
They're sensitive to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Can you share any companies that have made great strides using your program?
Yeah, there are a number of them that speak publicly about it. So we work a lot with Google all over the world in their cafes. We work with large food service management companies like Sodexo and Aramark, as well as others. So those are some examples of people that we work with. We also work with a lot of hotels, sort of hospitality organizations, and then with large food service operators who are, you might not think of them as food service operators, but like colleges and hospital systems that are managing a lot of food. I mean, it's amazing how much food goes through a college or a hospital. So we do a lot of that work as well. And then there are things that you would just never expect. Like we do a lot of work in mines.
Oh, I was going to say prisons.
We actually don't do any prisons. Not because there isn't food in prisons and that we couldn't help. There's a number of reasons why, but one of them has been that we do a lot of on-site training, at least we did in earlier phases of our business. And I didn't feel super comfortable asking my team to work in that environment. And secondly, you have to make your equipment like really battle hardened. And
right.
we weren't prepared to like make a prison version of our product. But like the mines, I think, are a fascinating example where we are measuring food waste in places as far afield as in the Andes in Chile, in Canada, in Western Australia, in the Pilbara, in Kazakhstan. And these are mining camps where people fly in and they work for, whatever, a week or 10 days, and then they go home and they have rotating communities. So that's like a college campus that just creates itself in the middle of nowhere. And they have a ton of food, and they have all the same food waste challenges that everybody else does. So we're doing those kinds of things in military bases and sports arenas and senior living facilities. And it's a really fascinating, when you see all the places that food exists, it's out there. And I believe really food connects everything. Mm-hmm. It connects us to our own health, to our families, our cultures, our communities. And so you find it everywhere. And thus you find food waste everywhere.
It's true. Thank you so much, Andrew. I love what you're doing. It's so inspiring. And I love, Lisa, how you've been so inspired by it and how you've taken that and then implemented it and made so many changes within what you're doing, and how innovative.
Can I say one?
No,
sorry,
you can't say it. No, I'm just kidding. Of course you
I was just going to say one thing. I just wanted to like plus one you on that, because when ReFed did the first report on food waste in 2016 in the US, it was really hard to get farm data. And they just kind of made a kind of educated guess, kind of like this is how much. And when you saw the updated report, it's much, much, much bigger. And I think that, Lisa, you have been leading the way on getting people to see this blind spot that was really not in the conversation anywhere near enough. And so if we're going to solve this problem, right, we have to take bold action. We have to cross boundaries. We have to go to places like farms. We have to deal with plate waste, what people aren't eating. We have to deal with grocery stores. Like, this stuff's all around. So thank you for leading in that area.
Sure.
Well, Lisa, you take it to another level. You are so innovative in this, and you take what people are doing and then you take it to another level, and you continue to do the research, and you get inspired from all these different people. And
there's a lot of people doing great work. I mean, we're all sort of pulling in the same direction. And so, hopefully the needle will start to move, right?
Well, you do exactly what I hope to inspire, which is connect, collaborate, and innovate.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, try to.
So Lisa, thank you so much for organizing this. And Andrew, thank you for sharing what you're doing, the impact you're having. And I really hope that I can't imagine how it won't inspire and support some people that are listening to this to inspire change and help them in their process as they continue to build new businesses and make change in the world of food. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you both for joining me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
To find out more about this episode of Essential Ingredients and access show notes, check out Next Gen Chef and choose podcast in the menu bar. If you like this episode, head to iTunes or Next Gen Chef's YouTube channel to subscribe. Learn more about Next Gen Chef, the platform that powers this podcast, by checking out our website, or visit us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Next Gen Chef. You can also check out my Instagram at Justine_Reichman. If you have thoughts about this episode or future episode ideas, leave us a comment at Next Gen Chef's YouTube channel or drop an email at team@nextgenchef.com. Thanks for joining us.